I've gone back and forth about whether I should share this story at all. Part of me wanted to keep it buried, but keeping it to myself has been eating away at me. So I think I need to put it somewhere. This happened when I was a sophomore at a private school in the Northeast. I won't say which one. I'm not trying to protect anyone, I'm just not ready for people to connect the dots. I was an English major, and I took my academics seriously. I still do. I was in a sorority, Kappa, but I wasn't the stereotype people usually imagine. I cared a lot about my GPA because I was planning to apply to law school after graduation. That context matters more than you might think. Last semester, I enrolled in an upper-level course on English Romanticism. It wasn't a huge lecture, maybe 25 students total. Most of them were juniors and seniors, so I was one of the younger people in the room. There was a professor who technically ran the class, but most of the real teaching happened during discussion sections, which were led by our TA. His name was Roar. Yes, that was his real name. I still don't know if it was his first name or his last name, but that's what everyone called him. Roar was probably in his late 20s, tall, thin, kind of awkward. He had this energy like he wanted to be mysterious and artsy, but didn't quite pull it off. Like the kind of guy who tells you he's in a band, but you already know it's not a good one. He hated silence. That was a problem, because participation in that class was usually dead. Most students would just sit there, stare at the table, and wait for him to talk. You could tell it made him uncomfortable, and when Roar got uncomfortable, he got mean. He'd cold call people out of nowhere, and then make sarcastic comments when they clearly didn't know the answer. It made everyone even quieter. Except for one person. His name was Luke. Luke was tall, brown hair, confident without being obnoxious. The only thing I really knew about him at first was that he was in one of the better fraternities on campus. But what stood out was how he handled himself in class. He knew when to joke, just enough to break the tension without derailing the discussion. And when he talked seriously, it was obvious he'd actually done the reading. The humor felt earned. He wasn't trying to be the class clown. He just had presence. I remember thinking he was smart, but kind of goofy in a way that made people like him. Since participation mattered for my grade, I started talking more too. Over time, it became obvious that discussion sections were being carried by the same few people. Me, Luke, and maybe 2 or 3 others if we were lucky. Roar definitely noticed. Whenever I spoke, he'd nod along. Sometimes he'd repeat what I said and expand on it, like he was validating my point. It felt good, encouraging even. For my first essay, I wrote about ambiguity in Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey. It wasn't groundbreaking, but I was proud of it. When I got it back, Roar had written long, detailed comments in the margins, not just corrections, actual engagement. He agreed with my interpretations, built on them, asked questions. It felt like he took me seriously in a way that professors rarely do. That's when things started to shift. Roar began paying more attention to me in class. He called on me more often, asked follow-up questions directly to me, held eye contact for longer than necessary. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. TAs have favorite students all the time. That's not unusual. I didn't want to be dramatic. But then the questions stopped being purely academic. He started asking me things that felt personal. Not inappropriate in their own, but strange in context. Things that didn't need to be asked during a discussion section. I brushed it off. Around that same time, I started seeing Luke outside of class more and more. Our sorority and his fraternity overlapped a lot socially. Mixers, joint events, parties, we were always in the same places. And Luke was always there. Naturally, we started talking more. After a few weeks, he asked me if I wanted to grab dinner sometime. I said yes. We went on a few dates, 3, I think. Then things progressed. He was sweet, attentive, and easy to be around. I wasn't head over heels, but I liked him. It felt uncomplicated and low pressure. Normal. One afternoon after class, I was walking to my car when I saw Luke standing behind the lecture hall with Roar. They were smoking cigarettes together. They were talking like they knew each other. That struck me as weird. I didn't even know Luke smoked. When I asked him about it later, he laughed and said he was just trying to get on Roar's good side so he didn't have to stress about grades later in the semester. I told him that was kind of pathetic.
He laughed and said he'd take pathetic over a bad grade any day. I believed him.
A few weeks passed after that, and on the surface, everything seemed normal. Luke and I kept seeing each other. Classes went on, parties happened. Life moved forward in that familiar, chaotic college rhythm where nothing ever really slows down long enough for you to examine it. But once something feels off, it doesn't really go away. I started noticing small things about Luke, things I probably would have ignored before. The way he always seemed to know where I was going to be, how he'd casually mentioned seeing me earlier in places I didn't remember telling him about. I told myself it was nothing. Campus isn't that big, people run into each other. Still, the feeling lingered. One night, I stayed over at his place. We'd gone out, came back late, and fell asleep almost immediately. At some point in the night, I woke up. Luke was still asleep next to me. His phone was lying on the bed between us. The screen was on. A YouTube video was playing quietly, the glow lighting up the room just enough that I could see his face. I know I shouldn't have touched it, I know that, but curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up. At first, I didn't see anything strange, just the usual stuff, texts, apps, notifications. Then I opened his photos. That's when my stomach dropped. There were photos of me, a lot of them. Some were normal, pictures of me studying, walking to class, sitting at a party, stuff you could maybe explain away as candid shots. But then there were others. Photos taken from angles I didn't recognize, photos taken at times I couldn't remember posing for. Some were intimate, some were explicit. A few were definitely photos I'd sent him, but many of them weren't. I scrolled and scrolled, my hands starting to shake. I tried to tell myself maybe I'd forgotten taking them, maybe they were screenshots from FaceTime or something stupid like that. But deep down, I knew someone had taken those without my knowledge. I didn't wake him up. I didn't confront him. I just put the phone back where it was and lay there staring at the ceiling, my heart racing. I felt weirdly numb, not angry, just unsettled, like something had shifted and I didn't know how to put it back. The next morning, I acted like everything was fine. For the rest of the week, I kept it to myself. Part of me was embarrassed. Another part of me didn't want him to know I'd gone through his phone. And maybe, if I'm being honest, I didn't want the truth. A week later, it happened again. Luke fell asleep before I did. His phone was right there, face down on the bed. I stared at it for a long time before picking it up. This time, I unlocked it. Guessing his password wasn't hard. It was just his birthday reversed. I remember thinking how stupid that was, like even his phone's security was lazy. I went deeper. Messages, deleted photos, archived folders. That's when everything fell apart. I found an unsaved number. There was a long message thread, weeks worth of messages, and mixed in with those messages were the photos, my photos, the same ones I'd just seen. He'd been sending them regularly, not once, not accidentally, consistently. Basically the entire time we'd been seeing each other. I felt sick. I started shaking so badly I had to sit down on the edge of the bed. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every photo, the number itself, because some part of my brain knew I'd need proof. And then I started crying. Not quiet crying. Ugly, uncontrollable sobbing. I woke Luke up by slapping his shoulder harder than I meant to. He shot upright, confused, and I shoved the phone in his face, demanding to know who the number belonged to. He panicked immediately. He stammered through this ridiculous story about it being his backup phone, about how he liked to send things to himself in case he lost his main phone. It didn't even make sense. I knew instantly he was lying. I didn't let him finish. I grabbed my stuff and stormed out before he could convince me to stay or calm down or second-guess myself. By the time I got back to my place, I was a complete wreck. I felt disgusting, violated, like I'd been living inside someone else's fantasy without knowing it. That week was the worst of my life. I don't really want to get into the immediate aftermath of what happened after I left Luke's place. Not because it isn't important, but because that week almost broke me. I was barely sleeping, barely eating. I kept replaying everything in my head, wondering how long it had been happening, how much of my life I'd unknowingly been sharing with someone else. Eventually, I went to the police. I brought everything with me: the screenshots, the message threads, the photos, the unsaved number. I remember my hands shaking as I handed my phone over to the officer, half expecting them to tell me it wasn't enough or that there was nothing they could do. But the moment they saw the messages, their tone changed. They took it seriously. A few days later, I got a call. They had traced the number. It belonged to Roar, my TA. I remember sitting on my bed when I heard that, staring at the wall as the words sank in. It felt unreal, like my brain refused to accept it. I kept thinking there had to be some mistake, some coincidence. There wasn't. Once the police started pressing Luke, he confessed quickly. He admitted that Roar had been paying him hundreds of dollars for photos of me, sometimes cash, sometimes transfers. The arrangement had started near the beginning of the semester, possibly earlier. Luke said Roar would tell him when I had class, when I'd likely be on campus, where I might be. Luke would take photos whenever he could, at parties, walking to class, even moments I thought were private. Some of the photos Roar requested were explicit. Luke never asked me for permission. He just took them and sold them. I don't know all the details. I don't want to. Luke was expelled from the university. Roar was fired immediately. There were charges, court dates. I'm pretty sure there was jail time involved, though I blocked most of that period out. What I do remember thinking, over and over, was that whatever punishment they received didn't feel like enough. Nothing really felt like enough. That was over a year and a half ago. I'm a senior now. I'm almost done with school. In a lot of ways, that feels like a relief. I've dealt with everything in my own way, quietly, without talking about it much. I thought I'd moved on. I thought it was over. Then, a few weeks ago, something started happening. There's a silver sedan that's been parking outside my sorority late at night. Not every night, but often enough that I've started paying attention. It usually shows up late, after midnight, and it's always parked in a way where it has a clear view of the house. I haven't seen anyone get in or out of it. No doors opening, no engine starting. Just sitting there, watching. I don't know if it's one of them. I don't even know how it could be. Luke was expelled. Roar was fired. I moved into this house well after everything happened. They shouldn't even know where I live now. So maybe I'm being paranoid. I really hope I am. But after everything that happened, it's hard to ignore the feeling crawling up my spine every time I see that car sitting there in the dark. If anything else happens, I'll update. This started about 2 weeks ago. I'm still not fully over it, but keeping it to myself was driving me insane, so I needed to get it out.